The siren lights cut through the quiet afternoon like a blade, flashing red and blue against the pale sky, and in that instant, Ayan Malik knew his day had slipped from tired to terrifying. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, heart pounding, already calculating what this stop would cost him when every dollar was already spoken for by school lunches, rent, and the fragile promise he made to his son each morning that things would be okay. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that can happen in ordinary daylight moments, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Midnight Tales. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Ayan pulled over beside a stretch of sunlit grass where children played in the distance, their laughter floating carelessly in the air. It was a weekday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day that felt heavy when you were carrying the weight of the world alone. He glanced at the cracked dashboard clock and felt the familiar dread bloom in his chest. He was late to pick up his son from school again, not because he didn't care, but because life had learned how to corner him at every turn since his wife passed away 2 years earlier, leaving him a single father with more love than strength and more bills than hope. The police officer approached with steady steps, her uniform crisp under the bright sun, her presence calm but unyielding. Ayan noticed her name badge, Officer Mara Collins, as she asked for his license. He handed it over with shaking hands, already rehearsing apologies that wouldn't change the outcome. He knew why he'd been stopped. A broken taillight he hadn't been able to fix yet, a small thing that had waited patiently until it could become a big problem. As Officer Collins stood beside his car, writing in her notepad, Ayan stared straight ahead, his thoughts spiraling. Another ticket meant another night of choosing between groceries and electricity. It meant more silent prayers whispered into the dark after his son fell asleep. It meant explaining, again, why promises sometimes bent under pressure. The afternoon sun felt too bright, exposing every fear he tried to keep hidden. Officer Collins glanced up at him more than once as she wrote. She noticed the child's booster seat in the back, the worn backpack on the floor, the exhaustion etched into Ayan's face in lines no one his age should carry. She asked simple questions about where he was headed, and he answered honestly, admitting he was on his way to pick up his son from school, already late, already failing in the small ways that felt enormous to him. As she continued writing, she made an offhand comment about responsibility, about how life had a way of piling things on when you least expected it. There was no judgment in her tone, only observation. Ayan nodded, his throat tight, feeling seen and exposed all at once. She mentioned marriage, stability, how having someone to share the load made things easier. And then, almost softly, she added that if circumstances were different, if life hadn't shaped him the way it had, she might have written something else entirely beside his name. The words weren't flirtatious or careless. They carried weight, empathy, and an understanding that surprised him. Something shifted in that moment. Not because of what she said, but because of how she looked at him, like a human being instead of a problem to process. Officer Collins paused, her pen hovering midair, and asked about his son. Ayan spoke about Ryan's love for drawing, about how he still set the table for 3 because he hadn't learned to stop yet. The words spilled out, heavy and unfiltered, carried by the strange safety of a stranger who listened. The sun dipped slightly, casting long shadows across the road. Children's laughter faded as school let out, and Ayan's worry spiked again. He glanced at the clock, then back at Officer Collins, bracing himself. She tore a slip from her pad and handed it to him, but it wasn't what he expected. Instead of the fine he'd been dreading, it was a warning, paired with a small note about a local repair shop that offered free fixes for single parents once a month. She explained it quickly, professionally, but her eyes softened as she did. She reminded him to fix the light as soon as he could and told him to drive safely. There was no lecture, no grand speech, just a moment of mercy wrapped in routine. As she walked back to her patrol car, Ayan sat there stunned, sunlight warming his face, something unfamiliar swelling in his chest. He made it to the school just in time. Ryan ran toward him with a grin wide enough to erase hours of stress, holding up a crumpled drawing of their little family under a bright yellow sun. Ayan knelt, hugging his son tightly, breathing in the scent of crayons and shampoo, silently thanking a universe that had finally blinked first. That evening, as daylight lingered longer than usual, Ayan fixed the taillight using borrowed tools and a YouTube tutorial, Ryan sitting nearby offering enthusiastic but unhelpful advice. Life didn't magically become easier, but it felt lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, the road ahead wasn't designed only to break him. Days later, Ion passed that same stretch of road again, sunlight pouring down, and saw Officer Collins helping an elderly man change a tire. She caught his eye and nodded, a simple acknowledgement that carried more meaning than words. He nodded back, a quiet promise to keep going, to keep believing that kindness could exist in unexpected uniforms. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in broad daylight, miracles don't need darkness to shine, please take a moment to engage with this video. Your likes, shares, and comments tell us these stories matter. And before the ending, a special request. Comment below and share a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your day, even in the smallest way. Ion drove on, the road stretching ahead under a clear sky, his son humming softly in the back seat, and for the first time in a long while, hope didn't feel like something fragile. It felt real, solid, and waiting patiently at the next turn.